How to land an airplane. That's what this video is going to talk about, but we're also going to talk about how to land an airplane in a crosswind. The logo in the top right corner is for a podcast I do with another corporate pilot where we discuss real aviation topics. If interested, there's a link in the description and in the comments section. The default steam gauge 172 will be used. The landing will be broken down into 3 areas, which will include final approach, flare, and touchdown. When on final approach, the airplane needs to be lined up with the extended center line of the runway. With full flaps, the minimum speed should be stall speed times 1.3 or the manufacturer's recommended airspeed. The crab method is currently being used to counteract the 10-knot crosswind from the right side. There is an additional method to maintain the center line. Notice the airplane is banked to the right and left rudder is used to keep the airplane's longitudinal axis parallel to the center line. This method is called a side slip. Note, the longitudinal axis is an imaginary line from the nose to the tail of the airplane. Another type of intentional slip is a forward slip. This type of slip is used to lose altitude. Let's say we turn final, we miscalculated our height and we're too high. Unlike the side slip, the forward slip is still going to go wing down, but we're going to use full opposite rudder. When doing a forward slip, the throttle should also be at idle, which will help maximize the rate of descent. This method can help the airplane descend quicker without increasing airspeed. Let's look at why that is. When the forward slip is used, more aileron deflection is possible, which increases drag. There's also full rudder deflection, which increases drag. But also when looking at the front of the airplane, as the airplane flies through the air sideways, oncoming air will also be hitting the left side of the fuselage as seen here versus hitting both sides pretty evenly in coordinated flight, which would be the case when using the crab method as we first saw. My personal preference when landing is the crab method and then using the side slip into the flare. But if poor planning creates a higher than normal airspeed, a forward slip can be held into the flare to reduce airspeed and bleed off that extra energy if necessary. The next part in the landing process is the round out or the flare. This process is meant to be a smooth transition from the normal landing attitude to the attitude the airplane will be at when it touches down. Here's what the flare looks like from inside the airplane. The flare should be started approximately 10 feet above the ground. The airplane should be flown level, and as the airplane starts to sink, more back pressure should be applied, and the nose should be held off the ground as the airplane touches down, allowing the mains to touch down first. Back when I was a flight instructor, this was one of the hardest concepts for students to get, is to judge that 10 feet of altitude above the runway and when to start pulling back and by how much to pull back. By far, landing is one of the hardest concepts, but there's a lot going on, such as maintaining center line. Here, the airplane is only being crabbed into the wind, aileron nor rudder are being used. This would create a side load on landing gear and also controllability issues upon touchdown. That method alone clearly did not work. Let's use rudder to make the longitudinal axis of the airplane parallel to the center line. Without using aileron and just rudder, now look what happens. The airplane's lateral axis is parallel to the center line, but the airplane drifted off to the left because the wind was pushing it to the left. But look what's happening now. That rudder is still being held in there, or at least attempted to be held in there. The airplane is now parallel to the center line even though it's off to the left, and aileron is being used. So as that aileron is used, the airplane banks into the wind. I can pull that airplane back across the runway and then adjust rudder input to keep the longitudinal axis parallel with the center line. And if you want to get better at crosswind landings in Microsoft Flight Simulator, practice what you just saw me do in any airplane, going from one side of the runway to the other while keeping the longitudinal axis parallel with the center line. Here's a landing from inside the aircraft, starting in the flare. As the flare is initiated, the airspeed crosses below 60 knots. Rudder and aileron are used to parallel and maintain center line, and the nose was held off the ground. Another important concept in a crosswind landing, the wind right now is off the right side. Notice the yoke, it's to the right. We want right aileron or aileron into the wind. This aileron correction needs to be used on a crosswind landing regardless of the wind speed, and the purpose is to help prevent the airplane from being flipped over by the wind. And speaking of aileron, one more thing with aileron correction when landing in a crosswind, The upwind tire should touch down first. The wind's from the right. The upwind tire is the right main gear. If that correction were taken out and both mains touched at the same time, the bank angle would be eliminated and the airplane would drift off to the left. Here's a bonus situation. My flight recorder did something and messed up the sim. The flaps are stuck at 20 degrees. If that flap handle is moved, the flap motor is going to run. What if you put the flap handle back to 20 and it runs some of the time because it can bounce around in rough air, for example? If you were in a real airplane and this happened and the flap motor was running constantly, what would you do? What can you do? You can match the condition, you can pull a circuit breaker, you can shut the master switch off. The airplane you're flying may have a checklist for this procedure. If it doesn't, then what? If you're learning to fly and you're watching this could be a good discussion to have with your instructor. And that's why it's a great idea to really know the ins and outs of the systems of the airplane that you're flying. There may be times when a checklist only takes you so far, but still doesn't answer the question to the problem. If the flap motor is running and the flaps are stuck at 20, is there a new speed limitation? Yes. What if we turn the master switch off to get the flap motor to stop running? Then what considerations are there? What airspace are we flying into? Are communications required? Light gun signals? The list just keeps going. I hope you enjoyed this video. For more information like this, check out the rest of the channel, but also check out the Corporate Pilot Guys podcast, which I am part of, with another corporate pilot. Between the two of us, we have a combined flight total exceeding 13,000 hours. I also have channel memberships on this channel. If you hit the join button and join at the private pilot tier or higher, that will give you access to videos on how to fly the Cessna Citation Longitude, as well as videos on systems of the Citation Longitude, of which 3 are completed so far. There are also videos on the Citation CJ4 and the FlySimware Cessna 414. And as always, thank you for watching.